Budu Saranai. Welcome to all our devotees who are listening to who are attending the Dhamma DESANA. Today, UNDUVAP POYA Day is a very sacred day for all Buddhists. This day signifies the visit of Theri Sangamitta, who arrived with the sapling of the Sri Mahabodhi at Gaya, under which the Buddha attained enlightenment. Jaya Sri Mahabodhi in Anuradhapura is venerated by all Buddhists and is one of the most valuable Bodhi trees for all Buddhists, both in Sri Lanka and also in the world. The other important event was the creation of the Bhikkhuni order or Sasana. Theri Sangamitta established the order for nuns. As you are aware, the All Ceylon Buddhist Congress, formed in 1919, celebrated its centenary year last year. The ACBC is engaged in providing their services to promote Buddhism in Sri Lanka and to engage in religious, social, charitable, and cultural services. The National Council for International Affairs, which is the committee that is organizing these events, was set up in 1956. And this year, we expanded our activities to have a close linkage with overseas Buddhist temples and Buddhists, and also those in Sri Lanka, for conducting of Dhamma programs on each POYA day using the online Zoom connectivity. You all know that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, most of us are at home, and we've also not been able to go to the temples, but this has also enabled us to go into this new area of using technology, enabling to bring the Buddhists throughout the world and closer to one another. So today's program, we have the theme is on identity and delusion. Let's understand delusion in context. This will be delivered by Venerable Gslkande, Dhammananda Thero. Venerable Thero will discuss on how much certain identity become important or unimportant in certain contexts. What extent is identity a part of suffering or dukkha? How much the discussion on delusion or moha connected with the identity creation process, and how much this discussion is important to have a peaceful mind. I'm also very happy that the Venerable Thero, Venerable Gslkande Dhammananda Thero, is the chairperson of the Walpola Rahula Institute of Buddhist Studies and head of the Department of History, Faculty of Social Sciences of the University of Ceylon. So I'm indeed very thankful and pay much merit to Venerable Thero, Venerable Gslkande Dhammananda Thero, for accepting our invitation to deliver this sermon today. And I have much pleasure in inviting Venerable Gslkande Dhammananda Thero to give his sermon now. Venerable Thero, you have to unmute, and also we can give Pansil and then start.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. So to start the program, let's take 5 precepts. Recite Namo Tassa twice to observe 5 precepts.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang
Dutiyam,
gacchami.
dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Yampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Yampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Yampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatyampi buddhang saranang.
Tatyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Yampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Yampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinnādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Dinnādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāme sumicchāchāra veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāme sumicchāchāra veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamādaṭṭāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Dear friends, it is great pleasure to have this discussion with you. It is pleasing to meet all of you, to share a few thoughts in this very important POYA day. Thank you, Mr. Lakshman Arvatawala, who invited me, and having several telephone calls and writing to me, and he was following to have this program today. So we all have to thank him for arranging this for me to address all of you. And it is so pleasing to be part of the programs. I mean, to be invited to a program organized by all Ceylon Buddhist Congress. I'm sure my mentor, Venerable Professor Walpola Rahula, had very close connection, relation with this Buddhist Congress. So it is an honor for me for being invited. And today's POYA day, as Mr. Lakshman Arvatawala mentioned, today is very important for two particular reasons. One is the Sanghamita theory coming, that is one, and then the Bhikkhuni order, which are very important to have a healthy society. The women in the society, female people in the society have to be respected, give due recognition, and to make the path for their freedom, for their journey of liberation. So Bhikkhuni order is one of such great step towards the liberation, and for female people to join and to continue the liberation process, the path. And for us, I am sure historically, as a historian from history background, I know from early ages here in Sri Lanka, female people were part of they had the rights of property, they had the rights of transferring property, and many inscriptions suggest that, you know, but in certain societies, these were, you know, it become practice very later period, but in Sri Lanka, it had been from 3rd century onwards. And for us, again, not only to celebrate, not only to talk about the great history, for us to, even today's topic, to context, and it is for us to think of how much the present society give that respect, or how we as a community to think of how to help, or not help, but how to reduce, if there is anything that block their, that works against their liberation. We have to, you know, be mindful. And without our mothers are happy, without female community of this society is happy, there won't be happy society and healthy children, healthy family. So that, you know, I'm very much concerned about the Bhikkhuni order of this country, and we as a practicing Buddhist, it is time for us to think how, if there is any hurdle for their liberation, we as a community, not as some, male people to help female. No, it is not. As one whole community, we have to be very mindful. And if there is anything that bar them, hurdle, there we have to work with loving kindness and, based on the Buddha's teaching. So this is, this is an opportunity for us to think of that as well. Now, let's go into topic today's discussion. I suggested this identity and delusion to discuss delusion in context. As the topic suggests, I always try to to bring Buddha's message to reflect on the life that we are leading, to reflect on the problems that we are facing, and to think of how to bring this knowledge into practice to help each other, to heal each other, to lead a happy life. So whatever my interventions throughout the history is to bring Buddha's teaching to help people to identify present problems and to see how we can put into practice Buddha's teaching to overcome such situations. So that is why I suggested this topic, to understand the identity and connected with delusion, and then to see it in the context. So I'm sure most of you who are listening to this Dhammadesana, you are very learned people. I'm sure you have listened to, as Mr. Wattawala mentioned in the introduction, many learned monks have delivered Dhammadesana. As individuals, you are well-read people. So you, maybe my intervention with you is kind of, to be with the fellow group of practicing Buddhists, to share the way I think, and it is open for you to give your feedback and to develop the way my effort. So it is not just a monk who come from very high level before you to preach you something. Instead, I like to be very humble. I see myself as one of you, as fellow people who are in the journey, and I'm speaking to a well-read people, learned people. I am very much open to learn from you and to listen to your feedback. So the main idea is to how to develop this idea, how to bring Buddhist teaching into practice to solve our day-to-day problem. I look at it, I want it to bring, because I feel it is, we so far, there are still room for us to bring Buddhist teaching into develop our maybe our policy, our education, our whatever we do. Buddhism is one thing, policy making is something else. No, Buddhism is the policy making. Buddhism is what guide us to plan our education. Buddhism is what guide us to how to work with children. And so that is why I try, so that is why I want to discuss Buddhist topics in context. So to go into the discussion, the identity. Identity, I'm sure different people may have different views, but we can summarize like identity is the qualities, beliefs, personalities, looks and or expression that make a person or group. So there are, individual identity and then group identities. So identity, what makes us distinguish from others and what, uniqueness of us. So I'm sure every one of us, identity is very important. I like to discuss my identities as a case study for us to think of what is identity. If I am to tell you my identity, first thing, I am Gslkande Dhammananda, my name. And then I'm a Buddhist monk. It is another identity. I'm a male, a Sri Lankan, Sinhalese, and many more university academic. As Mr. Watavala said, presently I'm the head of the Department of History. And so, I can go on telling you, sharing with you my identities. And if I ask from you, I am sure every one of you, each one of you have, many such identities, many such identities. And then the question is, when I reflect on identity, were these identities with us from our very beginning? If I am to think, if I go back about 20 years, then I was not a university academic. I couldn't claim that I'm a university academic. Not at all. I was the head of the department. And so several identities were not with me. I could, they were not with me if I go back about 20 years. If I go back 40 years, I'm not Dhammananda. If someone called me Dhammananda, I will not respond because I was not Dhammananda. And I was not a Buddhist monk. And then today, certain identities that I like very much and I think, that represent myself were not with me in certain ages of my life. That is very, in a way, eye-opening thing to see. Certain identities that I hold very strongly today were not with me when I go back to about 40 years. So identities were changing, and it was not something was with me from very beginning today until today. It was something always changing. And this is something that we can learn from this exercise, this case study. Identity is something evolving, something changing. And another point I like to share with you, these certain identities become very important or sometimes unimportant in certain context. I like to share with you one of my experience. About 1.5 years before, I happened to travel via Istanbul. I was not aware enough that some conflict is there in Myanmar, and the video messages and pictures were there in the internet, and the people are watching these things, and even some articles were, about things happening in Myanmar. And when I passed through Istanbul airport, I noticed the people who are working in the airport are looking at me in a way that it was not normal. I was like someone special. Particularly, that response was not very pleasing. The way they look at me was not friendly. And when I come back again, I had to travel via Istanbul. There, one gentleman, he was coming towards me, pushing his trolley. There were few big bags on the trolley, and he almost hit again. I just avoid the trolley, and still I smiled with him. He came again. I saw the anger on his face, and he asked whether I speak Urdu. I said, no, I don't speak Urdu. Then he said, what is happening in Myanmar is very wrong. Then I said, I understood why he is angry with me and why that the way of there. I said, yes, it is very wrong. It is, wherever human being should be respected, and the dignity of the human has to be protected, and what is happening there is wrong. And then we had few words and we talked, and I understood he is from Pakistan. He is coming from some other country after working there. And we all know when someone is away from his own country, he or she is very much attached to their country, people, their religion and all that. After seeing many pictures, and he was very much disturbed, and he never, all the identities I shared with you. I am Sri Lankan, I am Sinhalese, I'm a university academic. None of these were important for him. Only the Buddhist monk. Whether I am Myanmar monk or some other, it was not important for me. Only that identity became very big. I had many identities, but one identity in that context became very important. And this gave me to reflect on, to, my own story, my journey. When there was the armed conflict in north and east part of Sri Lanka, when I traveled to my hometown, Ampara, there the army people stop buses, and then we have to get down for checking. But always I was, they were very kind to me. No, sir, you stay there in the bus. So I was treated, my identity as a Buddhist monk was privileged identity. There I was very, and again, when I remember 1987 to 1990 period, I was a monk of some, 19 years old, 1920. And when I passed the checkpoint in a bus, always I was feared, because monks of that age, particularly university student monks, were part of what was happening. There were many incidents where Buddhist monks became disappeared people. Even myself, three of my fellow Buddhist monks became disappeared during that period. So that again, the same Buddhist monk and same military people, They are not against Buddhist monks, but context, depending on the context, identity becomes something privileged or something, you are risking your life. And this you can, as people who have been living in Colombo, this happened when we look at our past. Imagine a medical doctor, he is eye surgeon, he is a very reputed person and everyone likes to go to him because he is a very good doctor. But in a particular context, if he is a Tamil, if that is 1983, all other identities were not important to certain people, and only the Tamil identity become very important and put that person's life in risk. Now, I think now we are in a better content, better place to discuss about identity. When I prepare myself to this presentation, with this discussion, I look at what is there in Buddhism. Is Buddhism support develop identities? There, one sutra I like to share with you, that is the Paharada Sutta, where the identity is discussed. There, I am reading from Sutta Central Translation. As the ocean water lose the identities of rivers when they reach the ocean, all the great rivers, that is the Ganges, Yamuna, Achiravati, Sarabu, and Mahi, lose their names and clans and are simply considered the ocean. In the same way, when they go forth from the lay life to homelessness, all four castes, aristocrats, Brahmins, merchants, and workers, lose their former names and clans and are simply considered Sakyan ascetics. I will read in Pali. Pabajitwa jahanti purimani nama gottani samana sakkaputtiya. This is very important. When someone become a monk in the Buddhist order, Buddha says, they jahanti, they give up their former identities and become samana sakkaputtiya, a different identity that does not reflect the former classes, caste, or anything, but became one particular identity that does not have those hierarchical identities. And in the Dhamma Sutta, I am sure you know, Vevanniyam hi ajjupagatoti pabbajitena abhinham pacchavekkitabbang. One who has gone forth should often review this. That is, I have secured freedom from class. That is how Venerable Sujato has translated this freedom from class. But I prefer to translate it as any monk who has left home to become monks has to, often review, always keep in mind that I have given up, I have left all the former identities. That is what the greater meaning of this Vevanniyam ajjupagatoti, that I left all those identities. And when we come to Vasetta Sutta, Buddha says, human as one race and one, when we think of these three suttas, what we can see, the Buddha proposed a particular identity that does not discriminate, that makes very inclusive identity and not much hierarchical order. So this is just to start what is there in Buddhism about identity. Now let's go. I think we have another, about 20 minutes. Let's go into the discussion how the identity creates and how what is there in Buddhism, main teaching of Buddhism, what is there for us to understand the identity creating process. Here I am quoting from Madhupindika Sutta. There I am sure this is a very well-known sutta where Venerable Kaccayana elaborate what is explained by the Buddha. And this is very unique teaching. There I am quoting from the sutta. Venerable Kaccayana explains how the identity or the concepts are created. Here, I consciousness arises dependent on the eye and sight. The meeting of the three is contact. Contact is a condition for feeling. What you feel, you perceive. What you perceive, you think about. What you think about, you proliferate. What you proliferate about is the source from which a person is beset by concept of identity that emerge from the proliferation of perception. This occurs with respect of sight known by the eye in the past, future, and present. I'm so sure this is very well-known teaching. Chakkuncha paticceca rupe cha uppajjati chakku viññānaṁ tinnam sangati passo. I'm sure this is a well-known teaching. Here, the Buddha explains how we create certain ideas, concepts, and identities. And this process, when I was very young person, no one respected me as a monk. And gradually when I grew, when I decided to become a monk, and one particular day, there was a ceremony that it was open for people who are around. They saw that, I was no more a lay person, I became a monk. Now I wear different clothes, and the way I shave my head, and what I do, what I study, what I try to share with people, the response that I try to develop, where people provide different ways of responses. And gradually, my identity becomes something different. How people notice it, it is from the same process, by seeing, by listening, and following all these things through the 5 doors, and gradually I become someone particular holding some identity. And how, the stories I shared with you, what happened in Istanbul airport, and then what was, during the conflict time in the North and East area, how it was to be a monk during 1987 to 1990, and particular communities in this country in particular periods, and depending on where they live. If it is Sinhalese people during 1983, if they were living in North and East, their identity becomes something risky that put their lives in risky. And if those people were living in Colombo, then, that is the other way. Now, how this discussion connect with the basic or fundamental teaching of the Buddha. When we think of the first noble truth, that is dukkha, suffering, there are 3 kinds of dukkha explained. They are dukkha, that is the ordinary day-to-day things that makes us unhappy. And then viparinama dukkha, that the impermanence, nature of impermanent, things are changing, that creates certain unpleasant situation, suffering. The second. But the third is the most important, that is sankhara dukkha. Sankhara dukkha is what we are discussing here. The identity is sankhara, something conditioned. And since we are not aware that these identities are conditioned things depending on certain situations and contexts, we all the people who belongs to all the communities who are following, all the religions, since we are not aware of this process, we tend to cling to grab and hold these identities as something we have chosen. We have, they are our own decision to be, having those identities. And how this become part of the suffering, and how this discussion is important to have a peaceful mind. That will be the conclusion part of this discussion. I think we, not only as Buddhist practitioners or not only in the POYA Day discussions, this discussion has to come into our education, our other discussions, how this process of concepts are created, how this certain identities are created. And when we see those identities as something represent the person who have that identity, then we are under delusion. And if something happen, then we will feel, oh, it is sad, and we have to help those people. And then comes the identity, okay, what religion that particular person belongs to, or what community. Then we listen to the community identity. Then our concept, our kindness, our compassion may, shatter, may change. In that community, something like that. This is where I think Buddha's teaching, when we discuss about compassion, when we discuss about loving kindness, when we discuss about non-violence, when we discuss about how to help each other and how to make an inclusive living environment free from violence, I think this discussion is very much needed. Not why I suggest this has to go into other communities, why this has to go into our school classes, because this is not only something particular to Buddhists to know about, learn about. All the communities, all the people in this world should know how these identities are created, how much delusion is connected with these identities. And sometimes with the delusion and thinking that identity reflect particular, as an example, if that man who was very much disturbed attacked me at Istanbul airport, I'm sure he was very angry and he almost hit me with the trolley because he was driven by anger. And why he was angry with me, I haven't done anything against anyone, because the delusion. So this is where this discussion is very much connected with the lives, the life that we are leading today. And we hear, the ideas driven by delusion. There are sayings. I hear when I was a university student, I have heard if there is a problem, I am sure there will be a connect, some women connection is there, something like women create problems. I heard this from one student. I in a way confronted with him, you should not say that. Why he says so? Maybe his experience, based on those experience, he has created certain concept that does not reflect all the female people in the community. So this is where we have to bring this discussion into our community, all the discussion tables. This is very much relevant to, to make a violence-free society, lead a happy life of all of us, to have a peaceful mind. So now it is 6:48, the time. I will come to the end of this discussion. With this, I like to hand over to Mr. Lakshman or whatever to chair the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Thero. Let me thank Venerable. Much merit to Venerable for this very, very important and useful Dhammadesana, because it was really of practical importance. Because I think Venerable gave the importance and the case study, which I think is a very, very good method of explaining what was there in our topic, and the examples that were given, which I think was very, very useful and understood by everyone. So we are very, very, we offer much merit to Venerable for delivering this Dhammadesana, and we know that Venerable Thero is involved with the very, very important institute, the Venerable Rahul Thero's Institute, and doing quite a lot in that area, and also as the head of the Department of History in the university. And I'm sure when one is a senior lecturer and also with much experience in that area, explaining is also maybe something that comes automatically, which maybe a big advantage to Venerable. So once again, Venerable Gslkande Dhammananda Thero, thank you very much for this Dhammadesana. Much merit
Thank you
to
very much. And all the blessings be with you. Thank you very much.